Ever wanted to shoot on film but missed the opportunity to? Film is expensive to shoot on and get developed. In this video, I'll show you how I emulated the film look with footage shot on digital. Due to the compression of YouTube, the film grain that's in the footage might not be apparent. I've included a link to download the full res video in the description if you want to see the footage without compression. As a director of photography, we help craft the visual look and feel to the images that we create. That includes deciding on the medium which we shoot on, whether it's film, tape, or file-based. Images captured out of modern day cameras can sometimes feel very sharp and lack character. I've used different techniques to help achieve a more filmic look, such as adding diffusion filters to reduce the sharpness and contrast of modern lenses, along with adding film grain overlays and film effects in post. There's a few different methods that you can use in the post process to get a more filmic look on digital footage. In this video, I'll be using the Dehancer plugin for DaVinci Resolve Studio. Dehancer is a film emulation plugin that allows you to quickly emulate different film stocks on digital footage and stills. In full transparency, Dehancer reached out and provided me a full license of the plugin for me to do this review. But everything that I say in this video are my honest opinions of the plugin. Before we hop into Resolve to use Dehancer, let's first look at some of the characteristics of film. The main things that you notice with images shot on film are grain and halation. Grain is one of the most obvious characteristics when looking at images shot on film. Film grain is random texture that's caused by small particles of metallic silver or dye clouds developed from silver halide. The grain dances across the image in an organic fashion and is most noticeable in the midtones and shadow areas of an image. Halation is where bright, overexposed areas of the image bleed into the darker areas, causing glow in those areas of high contrast. Halation has a red-orange hue to it and can appear as an orange-red wash in the midtones. If you want to find out more about grain and halation, I've included some resources in the description below if you want to learn more. Even though it's not a direct characteristic of film, blooming in the highlights can add to the analog look of your digital footage. Blooming occurs around bright light sources and is characterized by the feathering of highlights into the surrounding areas of the light source, generally caused by some imperfections within the lens or if a diffusion filter is used to soften the image. Now that we've had a look at some of the characteristics that can be found in images shot on film, let's jump into Resolve and see how Dehancer is used to emulate film. Here are a few clips that were shot on a variety of different cameras using different color spaces and gammas. For the purpose of this video, I'll only talk about the tools of the plugin that I use on a regular basis. There are plenty of tools within Dehancer that you can use to add additional film effects to the footage, which you can find details of in the user manual. In the color tab, I'll create a couple of nodes and then find the Dehancer Pro plugin from the Open Effects tab and drag it onto the last node of the node tree. In the plugin settings, you'll be given a variety of options, and I found it best to work from top to bottom, making changes to the settings as you go. You may need to go back up to the other settings after you've changed them to make any minor adjustments, as some things that you might do further down might affect the overall look of the image. There are many different color space sources that you're able to choose from: Rec 709, Rec 2020, Cine on Film Log, and you can also choose your camera as well to pick a specific log format. For this footage though, I shot it on the iPhone in Rec 709, so I'll just keep it in Rec 709. You're then able to make any adjustments to your exposure, temperature, and tint. For this, I'll reduce the overall exposure fraction and warm the shot up a little bit. If you're needing to make any major adjustments, just add a node before the Dehancer node and make any of your primary adjustments there. Moving to the Film Developer tab, I'll enable it and then I'll add a bit of contrast and saturation to the image using the contrast boost and color boost. I'm liking the way it looks here, so let's now select a film stock to emulate. There are a lot of different film stocks to choose from, which include motion picture film stocks as well as some film stocks, such as Kodak Gold and Kodachrome. But for me, I like the look of the Kodak Vision 3 250D. So I'll stick with that film stock for this emulation. The push-pull EV allows you to adjust the contrast of the film stock. I'm liking the way the contrast is currently looking, so let's move down to the print tool. Only available in the Pro version, using the print tool, you're able to select the method in which the final film will be printed. The final look of the image will be affected by the medium that you select for the film emulation to be printed on. Since the film emulation I selected is a negative film stock, I went with the Kodak Endura Glossy Paper, which is what's recommended in the use manual. As you can see, the Endura Glossy Paper adds more contrast to the image. But you can also limit the range of exposure to match more of an analog look with the analog range limiter, which I'll go ahead and do. This reduces the contrast of the applied print profile. The next three options I feel give your digital footage a more filmic look. I'll enable the film grain, halation, and bloom. With this footage, I want it to look like it was filmed on 16mm film, so I'll select the corresponding profile. For this footage, I'll select the 50 ISO for the grain profile, and I'll select the 16mm Super 16mm option for both the halation and bloom. I'm really happy with the way that the footage is looking now, but if I wanted to make any changes, I can do that by selecting the custom options from the drop-down menu. Finally, I'm going to add a vignette to this footage. So I'll scroll down to the very bottom and I'll enable the vignette tool. I'm going to increase the size. To check to see where the vignette is, all you need to do is make sure that the Open FX overlay is on. Now you just click and hold on the screen and that will show you where the vignette is. At the moment, it's a sphere, so I'm going to change the aspect ratio. If you drag the slider to the left, you'll get a horizontally stretched vignette, and if you slide it to the right, you'll get a more vertically stretched vignette. I'm going to increase the size pretty much close to max. It's looking pretty good here. The last thing I'm going to do is just zero the X and Y coordinates off, as it's probably moved due to just checking where the vignette was earlier. Actually, I'm going to bring it up a little bit more because I think it might be a little bit too much. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about this here. The last thing I'm going to do is I want to change the quality to high. Now that we've had a look at the Rec 709 workflow, let's have a look at a log workflow with some footage that I shot on the Alexa Mini LF. So this piece of footage was shot on the Alexa Mini LF in log C. So I'm going to add a couple of nodes and we'll drop the Dehancer plugin on the last node. We'll select the vendor and we'll choose ARRI and select Mini as the camera. The footage was shot in log C, so the log C gamma is perfect. I'll then repeat the previous steps to get the look that I like. That's how quick and easy it is to add film emulation to log footage. On my current system, a 2020 13-inch MacBook Pro with M1 chip and 8 gigs of memory, when playing back footage in Resolve using Dehancer, I get about 6 frames per second. Dehancer recommends if you have to do any noise reduction of your footage to do that first, and then render out a ProRes master of the denoise footage before using Dehancer. I did render tests on a variety of the different film stocks using some of the different effects and film emulations. For the tests, I used Kodak Vision 3 250D as the film emulation, and 35mm 500 ISO as the grain profile. I did the 3 export tests with a 5-minute timeline in both 1080p and DCI 4K. The 3 tests being film grain only, film grain with halation and bloom, and lastly, film grain with halation, bloom, and film damage. These were the results of my tests. If your computer is really struggling, there are a few things that you can do to help with playback and render times. The first is by changing the quality in the options section to normal if it's on high. The second is by going into the custom options within the film grain and changing the mode of film grain from analog to noise. In doing this, I got about a 3-frame increase in playback on my system, which is by no means a drastic jump in speed, but could definitely get you over the line in terms of real-time playback. Just remember to switch everything back before you render out the final clips. In my short time using Dehancer, I've really enjoyed how easy it is to get a good looking film emulation on footage. It's great that you're able to emulate film stock straight from log footage without having to convert it to Rec 709 first, and having the option to make primary corrections to the footage without having to use a serial node before the plugin is really handy to be able to do. Being able to customize the characteristics of how film grain, halation, and bloom react to your footage gives you so much more control of how the final image looks, which is a nice touch. The LUT export feature is great as well, especially if you plan on filming a project on a particular film emulation and want to see what the final product will look like in the end. As much as I like the Dehancer plugin, there are some quality of life changes that I feel would improve the user experience. It'd be great to see a different implementation of how the different color spaces and gammas of each of the cameras are organized. I know that the sensors between each of the cameras that a manufacturer makes are slightly different, but it might be worth organizing all the color spaces and gammas together for each of the camera manufacturers. This will mean that you don't have to look through each of the different cameras to see which profile you're looking for, especially if you're using a camera that's not listed. An update to how we can access the custom settings for each of the tools would be great. Currently, if you want to make any minor changes to a pre-existing profile on a tool such as film grain, you first have to select the profile, then go back into the profile options and select custom from the list to get all of the editable parameters. Having the custom options as an edit button or toggle list at the bottom of the tool would make it easier to quickly change parameters for each of the tools. When using the vignette tool, I found it tricky to determine the areas that the vignette was affecting. I feel that the on-screen displays for where the vignette is on the footage can be improved. Currently, the only way that you can see where the vignette is on the footage is to actively click and move the vignette on screen. This can involve a bit of trial and error if you're looking to place the vignette in a specific area of the image. It'd be great if the vignette implementation was more similar to adding a power window, as you're able to visually see at a glance where the vignette is. The last thing I'd like to see implemented to the plugin is the option to save a template of your film emulation. Handy if you've built a custom film emulation and want to use it on other footage or future projects. Dehancer is a great tool to have in the toolkit, and like any tool, there's a right time and place to use it. I'm looking forward to using it more in the future, and hopefully I'll get the opportunity to use it on a full project soon. Dehancer were kind enough to provide a 10% discount if you use the code BSankSavant at checkout when purchasing one of their plugins. Using this promo code helps the channel out. Thanks for watching, and until next time, don't forget to hit record. Can you hear the ice cream truck?